What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Crush City Territory. I'm Chandler Rome, along with Tyler Stafford, and a special guest joining us today, the Astros Director of Amateur Scouting, Cam Pendino. Cam, you just had probably the longest week of your life, getting through the draft, getting through now 2 days of the draft and 20 rounds. Have you gotten any sleep, and how you feeling this morning?
Yeah, I slept in the day after day 2 of the draft. I slept in till like 11. I thought I was in college again. I was shot, so needed the rest. But we're back to equilibrium here after a couple days of getting rest. You know, it's a sprint. Those not just the 2 days of the draft, but the 10 days leading up to it. But yeah, excited about the class we put together, and happy to be back to square one in terms of sleep.
You said it was
11 a.m. sounds amazing. That's good for you.
Crushing. I'm normally a burn both types of the ends of the candle type guy, where I'll go late at night. And, you know, I found when I got the director job the past 2 years, when the weeks leading up into the draft, like your brain doesn't let your body sleep. It's just thinking through different permutations, you know, players, money, etc. So it's good that your brain quiets down and gets some sleep. It's always a good thing.
You said it was like you were in college again. I'm going to let you brag about yourself for a little bit. There's a lot of Astros fans that, you know, the last couple of days have seen your name in a lot of stories, have seen your name. They saw your name before the draft, and maybe this is their chance to put a face to a name, to, if you're listening on audio, to put a voice to a name. You went to Boston College. You graduated in 2018. Kind of give fans and give people kind of a perspective of your career trajectory and how you ended up here in Houston.
Absolutely. So after I graduated from BC, I got an internship right out of school with the Minnesota Twins. Started actually, that was when the draft was in early June. I started right in the third week of May, right in the draft rush and the preparation leading up into their 2018 draft. Also got to be involved, helping, administrative paperwork, putting together different pieces of baseball material for the decision makers in the 2018 trade deadline over there, which was the Ryan Presley deal from Minnesota to Houston. So I actually got to see the other end of it, which was an interesting perspective for me. I ended up getting a full-time job with the Astros in January of 2019 as a scouting analyst, where my main job was on the draft, but also involved with international and pro. And it was writing, it was primarily evaluating players through the lens of all information sources that we were starting to have access to. So that was everything from different data sources like TrackMan, athleticism data, obviously spending a lot of time like crushing film and like breaking down mechanics of swings and deliveries, etc., and writing evaluations after that. My role kind of evolved over the years, got more involved with the modeling side under James Click in 2022, less like actually building the draft model, but more just being involved under the hood as like our process evolved, going from Jeff to James, but then continuing to again, write up a ton of players through an evaluative lens. And then when Dana came here, started seeing more players live in person, continued to help out him, help out Chris. And then when Chris left for his role with the Mets, obviously there was an opening for the scouting directorship, interviewed for that, got it, and here I am. So that's been my background. I've been through a lot in Houston, but it's been awesome. I kind of feel like I've been raised here. I've learned from different regimes, all very, very smart, all very, very different. But I've been super blessed to be an Astro and fired up to play a small role in contributing to the future of the organization.
Yeah, so I also watch a ton of baseball, and I feel like, everybody has a preference of like, I like analyzing hitters or pitchers. There's just something in you that like speaks to you more, like something about pitch movement and spin rate does something for me that like swing path doesn't for hitters. Do you have something that you like enjoy, or even like a type of player that's like, this is like, I like doing this the most, even if it's not the most valuable or the one that you think is gonna be the best, just something that you enjoy scouting the most?
Sure. Well, my primary focus when I was initially hired was on the pitching side, right? So I love, watching 3 or 4 starts of the pitcher and breaking down, his arsenal preference, arsenal development opportunities. That really excites me. I think we have a track record of taking and developing small school pitchers. We took a couple this year. That profile where we think like, okay, this guy is super talented and we have levers that we can pull on developmentally to make them better. Always excited to evaluate those types of pitchers because you can never have enough pitching. So I would say a small preference there. At the same time, love breaking down hitters too, and that's an important part of our process. You need hitters to stack the lineup as well.
You talked about it, Cam. You've been through a lot here, and you're only 28. I can't imagine there are many younger scouting directors in baseball, but you've been through 3 general managers here. You've been through a lot of different regimes, a lot of different viewpoints on how to do things. Specifically with this one, since we're going to talk about this draft coming up, Dana did arrive in Houston with the pedigree as a guy that had run a bunch of drafts, had drafted very, very well. Derek Ladner was one of his first hires here. He's a guy that he oversees the entire maybe scouting department. I should have his official title in front of me. I do not. How from year 1 to year 2, because this was now the second year of this setup with you, Derek, and Dana. How did things evolve, and what has it been like having those 2 maybe veteran scouts, veteran evaluators, veteran draft people to bounce ideas off of and kind of help you as you evolve in this process?
It's a blessing. Honestly, the way Dana has set it up here, I am very, very lucky as a younger scouting director to have that sort of experience in the building. Derek's our senior director of amateur scouting. He's based out of Pensacola, Florida. But having him as a resource with his track record, in Kansas City and Arizona, his leadership style, the trials and tribulations he's been through. I talk to Derek basically every day. Derek, I call him my guardian angel. Like he lets me, I'm being serious. He lets me, take the lead on initiatives I want to take the lead on. He lets me, lead our staff. We lead it together, but he goes with my crazy ideas and we have a shared vision that I think is pretty cool because, he's seen the game of baseball through a completely different lens than I have. But we align on core pillars of how to run a staff and leadership and baseball philosophy. And that was before I had even met him. So in terms of development from year 1 to year 2, it's just continuing to, to establish the types of processes and core pillars of like actual under the hood evaluating that we want to implement. And then the day-to-day I take the lead on, but Derek's a phone call away. Derek does an unbelievable, obviously as an evaluator, but then also like support for our staff. Derek does a great job. And then Dana comes in later in the process. Dana, and I think he's told you, people this, he likes to see our first round picks in person. And then the rest of the draft, he wants to be involved or familiar with, but he is more hands off as we go down the board. Because obviously he's got a big job now in his own right. He doesn't have time to go run down the 120th best amateur baseball player anymore. But, it's a collaborative effort. Charles Cook also involved in that, by the way. Charles Cook is somebody not talked about as much in the press, but is extremely impressive. Initially hired me with the Astros, but super smart guy, good leader as well in his own right. So between the 3 of those guys, Dana, Derek, Charles, I'm extremely blessed with the leadership setup that's been provided to us in Houston.
I mean, you talk about like refining the processes and stuff, and I know you're not going to just say proprietary information, but baseball's been around a long time. People have watched people play baseball and try to evaluate the talent and try to project that. Like, how do you balance doing things, the way, just organizationally, this is how we did it last year versus how do you kind of identify areas that you want to tweak or improve on without just going like, there's everything that we can, how do you focus in your efforts on where you want to improve those processes?
No doubt. You don't want to boil the ocean, right? I think you want, it's still baseball at the end of the day, right? It's the core, you're trying to score more runs than the other team. I think it's boiling it down to okay, what drives, on the offensive side, offensive production, what are our core pillars? How do we value those? And then how can we do a better job evaluating each of those pillars? And then on the pitching side, it's the same thing. So it's less that we're like blowing up the past. I think we've done historically a good job, with the draft, especially in the mid and later rounds. It's more just refining, okay, when you're evaluating this type of player, we should be honing in on these skills, or we should be valuing this differently. It's also understanding that compared to 10, 15 years ago, the story of modern baseball is that the player development landscape has changed. And what we're able to improve in prospects has changed. So understanding how to align with our player development strengths and acquiring players that we feel that we are like best suited to improve, that's a big point of emphasis for us as well. Understanding like, okay, outside of the first handful of picks at the top of the draft, all these guys are going to need to develop, and they're going to have to work on different skills, and understanding which skill sets that we're more primed to improve than others is integral.
We will talk about some guys you actually drafted this week, right after a message from our friends at Foul Territory. Nothing beats relaxing on a hot summer day and watching baseball. And the simplest way to get in on the action is to download the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It's crazy simple. Just pick more or less on the stats for 2 or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. Nail your picks and you're heating up. Pick 6 brings upside with payouts up to 500 times. Pick 6 from DraftKings is the most fun way to play fantasy sports. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL for new customers to get a special sign-up offer. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. For additional terms or responsible gaming resources, see pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Cam, we'll get into specific players here in a bit. But first, there's fans watch the draft with a little bit more of a different mindset, a different lens, maybe than people that cover it or people that are actually running it. I said it to you before the pod, and I guess I'll say it now. You guys drafted Xavier Neyens with the first pick, announced him as a shortstop, and every Astros fan in my mentions was, oh my God, Jeremy Pena's leaving in 3 years. They just drafted his replacement. This is not the baseball draft is not a draft for need sort of enterprise, much like maybe the NFL or the NBA is. Can you kind of tell people kind of what the mindset is just holistically in the MLB draft that differs from the other 2 drafts that they watch, and they see, number 1 picks go straight onto a team. They, these other drafts are a lot more plug and play than maybe MLB, which is a little different mindset to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is not, the NBA, NFL draft, obviously your first round pick, your second round pick, like they're expected to come in and play for, contribute to the roster immediately. And that's not the case with the MLB draft, right? Like we're trying to capture the most amount of long-term value, independent of position. We're simply trying to take who we think is the best talent available. And then in terms of like, filling specific positional needs, like if we take a lot of one position, like we view that as having a surplus, like that's an organizational strength. And then, that's on Dana and the player personnel group. If we have too much of one position, I don't think you ever can, but B, like there's other, acquisitional avenues to fit, a present year roster construction to maximize what we're trying to accomplish. So we're never going into a draft saying we need to select X player to replace Y player or Y position. We're just trying to take the best talent available for the Astros, develop that talent, and then, we can figure out how to fit them within the roster construct at a given time. That really relevant.
Counterpoint, have you been introduced to my very good friend Cam Smith, who forgot to go to the minor leagues? So I don't know that you can come on here and refute all of that. Maybe guys are just playing 30 games in the minors now. But yeah, I mean, you're
I'll
right.
I'll say this. Number one, Cam Smith is an incredible talent, and we're extremely lucky to have him. And where it makes sense, like, look, I don't think it's a secret. I think if you study the track record, like, we're gonna, Dana is gonna be unafraid to move players quickly, right? At the same time, you can't sacrifice value in the draft in order to get that production quicker, right? Like, ultimately, whether it's Xavier Neyens or a college player or a high school player, it doesn't matter. The goal is to select the best player who can provide the most, talent down the line. And we want the most, cumulative amount of production. Obviously there's a discount for when that production takes place, but we're never going to approach the draft trying to get guys to the big leagues as quick as possible. When you have a situation like Cam Smith, like, he's a freak, right? Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, that's the exception. That's not the norm. But obviously, what Cam's been doing is a testament to him and his hard work, and he's an impressive talent.
You said you don't normally pick player X to replace player Y. You did pick a player X in the first round of this draft with Xavier Neyens. Bucking a little bit of precedent, the first position player you guys have taken in the first round since Kyle Tucker, the first high school position player, I should say, Kyle Tucker, the first high school infielder you've taken in the first round since Carlos Correa. No pressure, kid. What made Xavier the guy that stood out at 21, and can you kind of go through how you guys scouted him, what you guys evaluate, and kind of how you see his long-term future playing out?
Absolutely. So, we have track record with Xavier dating back to last summer. He's from the Pacific Northwest. He's been long famous up there as like a standout talent. So we knew who he was. Like, right now, if you ask me 2026 draft names, I can give you 5 to 10 off the top of my head, not many, because you're dealing with 800 names in a given class. Until the entire class has been signed, I'm focused on 25. Then you turn the page to 26. Having said that, I knew who Xavier was at this time last year before I had really studied the class. And to be candid with you, I didn't think we would be in a realistic situation where we would have a chance to draft him. We scouted him all summer across the summer circuit. It starts with our area scout, Tim Kostick. He's our senior scouting supervisor, West Coast. He does an outstanding job. Really got to know the kid well. And then we sent the cavalry in this spring, right? I went up there in April. Jamie Lehman, our West Coast cross-checker, went up there. Deshaun Watson, our special assignment scout, went up there. Derek Charles went up there. Dana Solomon, our pre-draft workout at Daikin. And he was impressive, right? Like, there's no other way to put it. It starts with the bat speed. He creates a lot of power, and he's going to have he has the chance to do a ton of damage one day. It's a beautiful left-handed swing. We think there's a little bit of refinement that can come in the path that I think will help him out. But it's a pretty swing with a ton of bat speed. And then really the thing that stands out about Xavier is his zone control. Like, his ability to control the zone for a high school kid is impressive, right? And we think, in terms of like generating offensive production, it's a pretty good combination when you can swing at strikes, take balls, and when you swing at strikes, you're doing damage on those swings. You do that enough, that's a pretty exciting package. And then defensively, we think he's going to stay on the dirt. We're going to give him every chance at shortstop. If he doesn't end up at shortstop, we think he can be a pretty strong third baseman. We think the actions are clean. He has a really strong arm. And I think, we'll give him every opportunity to stick on the dirt. And then the cherry on top is the kid. The kid is super impressive, super humble, super articulate. He's a baseball rat. He hits in his barn like every day. He's been on the summer circuit. He's played with the best players his age and succeeded. It's an impressive individual. It might take a little bit longer than, a college player, but we think that we have the resources in place to unlock his game, to give him a chance to be a future middle of the order bat. So add it all up and we were stoked.
So you mentioned a few things in there that are like objectively quantitative, right? Like you said, bat speed. I'm sure that you have 1,000 different data points of both his bat speed and compared to everybody else. Like that's something that you can measure. Another thing you said was, his zone control. He's from the Pacific Northwest. He's in high school. I'm assuming he's not seeing a ton of, phenomenal talent where you're getting the opportunities to assess that ability. So I guess I want to ask this about him specifically, but you can answer this just in general. Like, how do you measure those kind of intangible, just like baseball things about a player when they're not playing, in the SEC, or they're not, somebody that's facing incredible competition all the time? How do you kind of balance that and figure out where those skills are for those players?
Sure. Like, I think with high school players compared to a guy in the SEC, there's going to be, a level of uncertainty around your evaluation, right? At the same time, I think that begins on the summer circuit. When you watch the film on the summer circuit, we're at all of these events. We saw him, we saw him at all the major events. I saw him, everybody on staff saw him. And then we have this entire treasure trove of video and of data points to evaluate the player. It's becoming, the high school market's becoming a higher information market than it was even 5 years ago, let's call it. At the same time, you have to understand what Xavier's trying to do at the plate. And that's through talking to him, walking him through his at-bats and trying to get in his brain. There's other objective tests that you can implement to try to estimate that. But look, there's going to be projecting out, a high school approach. There's a level of uncertainty that is uncomfortable. At the same time, going through our evaluative process, and this was held staff-wide, evaluating X, we think that he has a chance to have those skills and to contribute positively compared to his peers, right? So you're comparing him relative to his peers, and we think he stood out on that front. So we were encouraged by that.
Comps are always a dangerous game, but I'm going to say a comp that Xavier gave himself the night of the draft, and it's apt. He mentioned Corey Seager, a bigger guy on the left side of the infield that hits left-handed. You guys also drafted another large guy that played on the left side of the infield for a long time here in Carlos Correa. Obviously, Correa hits right-handed. Which one of those comps, if either of them, is probably more apt for Xavier?
That's a dangerers game. That's
which one of those two?
Yeah, I try to get the sound director, get the fans. Yeah, that this is a star. And look, we think he has star upside. There's also his distribution of outcomes is wider compared to a college guy. There's no getting around that. At the same time, I think the bat, we think the bat has a chance to contribute super positively. We think defensively, bigger guy, left side of the infield. I don't think that's lofty expectations to project on an 18-year-old. But I think the fact that folks are throwing out those comps speaks to the type of talent that X possesses.
And let's be clear that X threw out one of those comps. He was asked who he kind of models his game after. First, he said Bryce Harper. He said he's modeled his game after Bryce Harper forever. Sure. Again, very lofty. And then, he did mention, defensively as a bigger guy that plays the left side of the infield, he's always kind of gravitated toward Corey Seager. And that's obvious. It's pretty,
sure.
It's pretty plain to see there that they're the same kind of, build. 6'4", 210 is what Xavier's listed at. Corey Seager's 6'3", 215. So the parallels are there, but again, expecting any 18-year-old kid to be Corey Seager or Carlos Correa is a little bit foolish. We're going to talk about the guys you took after Xavier Neyens, right after another message from our friends at Foul Territory.
Hey, have you heard of Built? No? Do you pay rent? Yes? Okay, good. Let's talk. There's no cost to join, and just by paying rent, you unlock flexible points that can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and much more. When you pay rent through Built, you unlock two powerful benefits. First, you earn one of the industry's most valuable points on rent every month. No matter where you live or where your landlord is, your rent now works for you, and you gain access to exclusive neighborhood benefits in your city. Built's neighborhood benefits are things like extra points on dining out, complimentary post-workout shakes, and much more. Unique experience experiences that only Built members can access. And when you're ready to travel, Built points can be converted to your favorite miles and hotel points around the world, meaning your rent can literally take you places. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, what are you waiting for? Start paying rent through Built and take advantage of your neighborhood benefits by going to joinbuilt.com/foul. That's joinbilt.com/FOUL. Make sure to use our URL so that they know we sent you.
Tyler, would you like to guess where a third-round pick Ethan Fry went to college?
Cam, Chandler has an obsession. Some would say borderline unhealthy on his college that he went to. As an Aggie, I could never imagine making that so much of my identity. But yes, because you've told me 18 times already, I do know that he went to LSU, and so I'm assuming you're a little familiar with him as well, Chandler. But yeah, tell us a little bit about Ethan Fry.
Yeah, Ethan was somebody who was honestly a late riser for us, but I think as a staff, we did a really good job with Landon Townsley, our area scout in the Deep South, who lives right there in Baton Rouge, has 3 years of history with Ethan, even dating back to high school. Our Midwest cross-checker, Mike Myers, did an outstanding job getting in there, raising the flag. And then you take a look under the hood, like there's a lot to like here. This was an ascending SEC bat that was hitting for average and for power in the SEC and was starting to put it all together. You know, he DH'd for the Tigers, but when he came to Minute Maid, he is a sneaky, very, very good athlete. And we think, you know, we're going to give him every chance in the outfield to be a really good outfielder. We're actually going to give him reps in center field because he can fly. He can move out there. Like we don't think this is just like a corner masher. We think this guy has a semblance of an approach. We think he recognizes spin. I mean, the bat speed and the ability to do damage is definitely there. Like it's an exciting offensive package, but I wouldn't shortchange the athlete that Ethan is in tandem with another guy plus makeup, really, really strong. We think high aptitude, and he's going to work his tail off. And then on top of that, you know, he's done it at the highest level, national champion. You know, he was mainstay in the heart of that order. So we were really excited, and we think there's a chance that folks look back and that pick ages really well. Like we were pumped to get him at 95. We didn't think that he was going to be there. And, you know, we were fired up when we had that opportunity.
It's kind of straightforward to draft guys from LSU or really any, you know, SEC premier, even Texas A&M. It's easy to draft guys from these big programs, and you see them. They're on TV constantly. They're facing other guys that are going to go in the first, second round of the draft, you know, on a pretty regular basis. But taking a guy from wherever Taylor University is, that's probably a little more of a difficult challenge. Twofold here. First, you know, the guy we're talking about is a guy named Gable Pentecost. He's your 6th round pick, a right-handed pitcher out of Taylor University. You can talk about him, but just I guess in general, you know, this is a team that has a guy pitching every 5th day from Wayne State, has a guy playing shortstop from the University of Maine, has a guy that's may come off the IL soon from Millersville University. I only cover you guys, so I see the small school success constantly, and there are other clubs that find diamonds in the rough or that go to, you know, the non-Power 5 schools and find, you know, players. But you guys seem to do a very, very good job. Your hit rate is higher than most. Why do you think that is, and what is it about you guys that you're able to unearth some of these guys from places that, quite frankly, I didn't know existed?
Sure. I think it ties back. It's twofold. The first thing is I think it ties back to what we were talking about earlier, that we evaluate really well. Our scouts are very good at evaluating, and our analysts are very good at valuing profiles. And I think when we put our heads together, we understand that the profiles of like what needs to be polished up in PD, and we lean on our player development strength, which we think is a competitive advantage in this organization relative to other clubs. Like we want to identify players who we can help shape up the relative deficiencies in their game. Smaller school guys tend to not have as much resources to help them polish up their games compared to like, SEC schools. So when you get an opportunity to have a guy who's athletic, who has outlier skills, and we're hunting outliers, right? I think if you watch guys on television, even your most, guys that fans might get frustrated with, like the reason they're playing on television is because they have some sort of outlier skill that has carried them to the big leagues, even if the rest of their, skills aren't at the same level as that outlier skill. So we're looking for outlier skills, and then we're saying, okay, take that outlier skill, what needs to be polished up in terms of the secondary parts of the profile, and can we help the player, improve? We think we can. We think we're good at identifying that, especially with pitchers. And then from there, it's like, okay, it comes down to the human. The more I do this, it comes down to who is the person that you're acquiring, and are they going to buy into what we're trying to do. There's an element of luck involved in the draft as well. We all know that. And but you put it all together, and I think we have had a successful track record of targeting these smaller school guys who are athletic, have outlier skills, and have plus makeup and buy into what we're trying to do. And the proof's in the pudding. And I think with a guy like Gable, we're really excited about all the above. I mean, we think he's got interesting fastball traits. His secondaries with his slider and curveball, he commands really, really well. And so we think there's a chance to pull on a couple developmental levers to give him an opportunity, if it all clicks and he stays healthy, to be, a starting pitcher one day, right? Like at the major league level. We think that sort of upside's there. So we were fired up to get Gable where we did, and shout out to Drew Pearson, our area scout in Indiana, did a great job with this one. And we were fired up to get Gable.
I hope my boss is not listening. I'm in higher education sales, and I have Indiana as my territory. And I learned along with the rest of you that Taylor University exists, despite that being a school that I should probably be aware of. So that gives you an indication of the size there. But you mentioned those outlier skills, right? And again, a lot of those are quantifiable. And this we can just kind of talk about this generally. You mentioned, the Astros have had a lot of success with pitchers specifically, of kind of identifying outlier skills. I mean, even when in your first month on the job of the Ryan Presley trade, right? Like the story of that was, the Astros have seen this spin rate and maybe it's not being utilized at its most effective level. When you're, I don't know what the computer looks like. I'm imagining just an Excel spreadsheet that you're sorting by spin rate. I know that's not what it is, but in my head, that's what's happening. Do you have a favorite outlier, like a skill or a thing that a player can do, maybe specifically with pitching, but if player A and player B have the exact same stats, the same underlying numbers, but one is an outlier in velo, but one is an outlier in spin rate. Is there one that you think, becomes more valuable, or one maybe, I guess, that the Astros do a better job of developing when they do have those types of outlier skills?
Yeah, that's a good question. And what I want to say is you don't want to eliminate certain profiles of players just because like the way their profile is oriented is different than maybe, a success of a past player who we've developed successfully. You want to be careful to not, because good players are good players. At the same time, I think it comes down to and this is I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but it's how different, how separated of an outlier is this from the rest of the distribution of players, right? And I think it comes down to, it's is this we use the 20 to 80 scale in scouting. Is this a 60 or is this a 70? And understanding, the distribution of the draft population and tools and skills, and the difference between going from a 50 to a 60 and a 60 to a 70, when you see that the guy who's no, this skill is truly stand out among peers, you want to run to that. So what I would say is I don't necessarily have a favorite as much as I have a preference towards trying to hunt the most special skill we can find. And then as long as the other auxiliaries, components of the profile we think we can improve, we're going to target those types of players.
The one thing I personally like about covering and looking at the draft is trying to discern you guys' plan money-wise. You guys had, your bonus pool this year was about $7.2 million. The slot value for Xavier Neyens at 21 was about $4.2 million. I'm not going to get in the weeds on how it all works, but essentially that $7.2 million you guys can use to sign the picks within the first 10 rounds. And then after the 10 rounds, anything over $150,000 to the guys in rounds 11 through 20, that difference from 150,000 goes toward your bonus pool. So looking at it in general, I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I'm not expecting you to leak every signing bonus right now, but in general, high school players are a little more expensive than college players. High school players have more leverage. They have commitments to colleges, things of that nature. A couple things. First of all, how much is NIL at the college level given college draftees more leverage than maybe they had in the past?
So on the NIL front, it's definitely a changing monetary landscape. It's something we have to be aware of, and our area scouts do a great job retrieving information relevant to that on the front end that helps inform the signability of the player. It definitely impacts the distribution of the class. I do think, though, that there is a limit. Like, if you are motivated enough to sign a college player, I still do think financially it makes sense for the college player to turn professional after 3 years of college baseball, or when they're 21 years old. If they're talented, I still think the financial system is going to favor, having those players turn professional. I do think at the same time, towards the later part of the draft, the NIL is playing more of a factor, obviously, than 3 or 4 years ago.
And then, you guys did go take a high school catcher in the 7th round, which usually when you're taking a guy in the first 10 rounds of the draft, you guys have a pretty good idea of their signability. And suffice to say, I don't think you guys would select a player if you didn't think their signability was very, very high. So Jace Mitchell, the guy you took in the 7th round, Delaware had not had a high school player, or I believe a college player, taken in the first 10 rounds of the draft since 2013. Jace Mitchell is left-handed hitting catcher from Delaware. What did you guys like about him that, allowed you guys to take him at that spot? And where is maybe his longer-term future as a professional?
Right. And I think this speaks to our confidence in Jace. Like, you mentioned geographically, Delaware and high school catchers, like, you study the base rates of the draft, like, that's not a frequently mentioned combination right there, right? Like, to be candid, on the surface, that sort of profile is scary. At the same time, we did a ton of homework with Jace, and we are super convicted in the entire package that we're getting. So first off, he's been around big leaguers. He trains at a hitting facility in Philly where he's been around Jackson Merrill and Yandy Diaz. He's actually hit with our director of hitting development, Dan Hennigan. So he has a relationship with him, understands, our core offensive developmental pillars. And I think that helps him immensely. But separate of understanding the language, I think what's important about Jace is he's super talented and has continued to get better from when we first saw him a year ago to now. He has, we think he's got the chance to hit for average and power. It's a beautiful left-handed swing. But at the same time, we think he's a real catcher, because normally I would be hesitant about high school catcher, but we think he has the overall components, both tangibly and intangibly, which is important, as you guys know, for our catchers here in Houston. We think he checks all those boxes. He's a baseball rat. He's a student of the game. He's, his leadership and his work ethic and his aptitude for an 18-year-old kid from Delaware is unbelievably impressive. So you put all that together and you get a lot more comfortable with the profile. And we're excited about Jace. So yeah, in terms of the signability aspect of it, you have a general understanding of signability of players, especially in the top 10 rounds. Like, you have a pretty good feel for what it will take to sign a player.
I mean this sincerely. I'm not joking. He's from Delaware. He's a high schooler. If you are projecting him as a catcher, when does he get, like, I guess, how valuable is it for him to get Spanish lessons and be able to. I mean, sincerely, like
No,
that's
yeah.
a huge part of like why Martin Maldonado is always talked about as a guy that just like can handle the pitching set. Is that something that you look at as like, okay, this is a thing that we need to, give a catcher a skill in that way?
You know, it's funny. We made a comment to him. He drove with his dad from Delaware to Chicago to our pre-draft workout in Chicago. And Jamie Lehman, our West Coast cross-checker, made an offhand comment to him about, hey, you're going to need to learn Spanish. You know that. And like we were going through like our intangible checklist when we were talking to him. He shows up at the combine 3 weeks later and he's got a streak on Duolingo going. And he's already like, oh, I hadn't considered that as like I needed to add that to my toolbox to be a major league catcher. Like, no, that all kidding aside, especially in Houston with our track record of signing and developing Latin American starting pitchers. Yeah, I think Spanish is integral because as a catcher, you're the heartbeat of the staff and you have to be able to relate and communicate with the pitching staff. So yes, I do think that will be a part of Jace's development. And look, it's a high schooler. It's going to take a little longer than a college guy. A high school catcher is going to take, project even further. At the same time, like we talked about, we're trying to accumulate the most total value, and we think we have a chance to beat people with Jace.
Chandler, you have a favorite question for scouts that I love.
I do.
Will you ask it? Because I love these stories. They're always fun.
I do, and we'll end it on this one, Cam, and it's probably a hard one. Who is the best player you've ever scouted? I like to ask every scout that comes on. It can be amateur. It can be a guy that maybe you were in a pro game. Like, best player you ever scouted.
Yep. I'd say Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt at the area codes was pretty impressive. I'll go with that one.
He's turned out all right.
Sure.
Talk about an 80 outlier on some stuff there. That makes sense.
There you go.
Cam, this was excellent. We really appreciate you giving us more time than you actually said. We told you we'd keep you for 25 minutes. We're on to 42. So we're going to get you out of here. We appreciate you coming on, talking about your journey and some of the new Astros that are going to be filtering into the minor leagues here pretty soon. Thank you again. As always, you can follow me on X at Chandler_Rome. You can follow Tyler at Tyler C. Stafford. Please rate and review us on Apple. Please, you can comment on any Spotify episode you choose. You can subscribe to the Crush City Territory YouTube channel so you can get notified every time we post a new pod. We will be back on Sunday afternoon after the Astros finish their 3-game series in Seattle against the Mariners, a pivotal 3 games for the positioning of the American League West. We'll talk to you then. Thanks, guys.
Bye.